Every generation has that one song. The kind that comes out of nowhere, takes over every radio station in the country, and then the artist behind it just vanishes from the charts forever. Some of these songs were built around a dance move. Some came from a phone number. One came from a guy talking about being driven crazy in the strangest way imaginable. So today, we're counting down 15 weirdest one-hit wonders of all time. Number 15, Monster Mash by Bobby Boris Pickett.
He did the Monster Mash.
Back in 1962, a struggling actor named Bobby Pickett had a party trick. He could do a spot-on Boris Karloff impression, the same growl and cadence Karloff used as Frankenstein's monster in the old horror films. His singing group used to laugh at the bit, and eventually someone suggested he build a whole song around it. That's how Monster Mash was born, a novelty tune riding on the dance craze wave of the early 60s, when songs like The Twist had everyone naming dances after themselves. Pickett and his band, the Crypt Kickers, recorded the track and shopped it around, but multiple record labels turned it down. They thought it was too strange, too gimmicky, not something radio would touch. One label finally took a chance on it, and the song shot straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 that October. The track leans heavily on call and response, with Pickett's monster narrator hosting a graveyard dance party attended by Dracula, the Wolfman, and a whole cast of other classic movie monsters, all doing a dance called The Mash. That kind of horror movie playfulness fit right in with the era, since local television stations across the country were running late-night horror reruns, keeping those old monster movies fresh in people's minds. What makes the story even stranger is that the song's popularity didn't stop there. Because it's built entirely around Halloween imagery, radio stations kept bringing it back every October for decades, and it actually returned to the Billboard charts more than once in the years that followed its original release. Pickett tried to recapture the magic with a follow-up called Monsters Holiday, built around the same character but set at Christmas, and it did modestly well that same year, though nothing else in his catalog ever came close. He spent the rest of his career known almost entirely for a monster voice he first did as a joke among friends.
They played the Monster Mash. The Monster Mash. It was a...
Number 14, Mickey by Tony Basil.
Oh, Mickey, you're so fine, you're so fine, you blow my mind.
Before she was a chart-topping singer, Tony Basil was already a respected choreographer, having worked with major acts including David Bowie and contributing to the Talking Heads' famous Once in a Lifetime video. The song Mickey actually started life as a British tune called Kitty, performed by a group named Racy, before Basil reworked it with new lyrics addressed to a boy instead. Released in 1982, it went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 that December, capping off a slow climb up the charts that had taken most of the fall to complete. The accompanying music video, built around Basil in a cheerleader outfit leading a squad through tightly choreographed routines, became one of the defining visuals of MTV's early years, helping cement the young channel's influence on how songs were marketed and consumed. The video earned Basil a Grammy nomination and heavy rotation on MTV at a time when the network was still building its identity, and the cheerleader imagery became so tied to the song that it's difficult to separate the two even now. Despite the song's massive cultural footprint, Basil never had another single reach anywhere near that level again, though she continued working steadily as a choreographer and director for years afterward, staying involved in music and dance well outside the spotlight that one song had briefly put her in. Number 13, In-a-gadda-da-vida by Iron Butterfly. The story behind this title is almost better known than the song itself. Iron Butterfly's singer, Doug Ingle, had written a track called In the Garden of Eden. As the story goes, he was in rough shape when he first tried to explain the title to drummer Ron Bushy, and the words came out slurred beyond recognition. Bushy just wrote down what he thought he heard, and In the Garden of Eden became In-a-gadda-da-vida. The full studio version, released in 1968, runs over 17 minutes long, built around a long instrumental jam and a drum solo, which was almost unheard of for a rock single at the time. A trimmed-down radio edit, cut to under 3 minutes, made it onto the Billboard Hot 100, where it reached number 30. The full-length version never got that kind of chart placement on its own, but the album it came from sold in massive numbers, becoming one of the best-selling records on the Atlantic label up to that point, staying on the album charts for well over a year.
Oh,
It became a cornerstone of the emerging FM album rock format, where DJs weren't limited to short single edits and could play the full 17-minute version in its entirety, drum solo and all. Drummer Ron Bushy's extended solo in the middle of the track became one of the most recognizable moments in early hard rock, influencing plenty of drummers who came after him. Iron Butterfly toured heavily off the strength of that one song for years, but the band never landed another release anywhere near that level of recognition again. And the tangled, mispronounced title remains one of the most talked about accidents in rock history. Number 12, In the Year 2525 by Zager and Evans. Denny Zager and Rick Evans were a folk rock duo out of Lincoln, Nebraska, when they wrote a song unlike almost anything else on the radio that year. It imagines the future in thousand-year jumps, painting an increasingly bleak picture of where humanity might be headed. There's no chorus in the traditional pop sense, just verse after verse building toward its warning. The two of them originally recorded the song themselves in a small home studio and had been performing it live for years before a bigger label picked it up for wider distribution. Released nationally in the summer of 1969, it shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 6 straight weeks, an enormous run for any single, let alone one built around such a bleak vision of the future. The single went on to sell well over 1 million copies and topped the charts overseas as well, including a run at number 1 in the United Kingdom. What makes Zager and Evans especially rare in one-hit wonder history is that this was their only entry on the Hot 100 period. Not just their only hit, but their only charting song of any kind before or after. After that summer, the duo faded from the spotlight almost entirely, leaving behind one of the most successful and most singular one-and-done careers in chart history. A song that spent more time at number 1 than most artists manage across an entire career. Number 11, Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. Norman Greenbaum wrote one of the most recognizable guitar riffs of the era almost by accident, running his signal through a fuzz box to get that buzzing, distorted tone. The lyrics are steeped in gospel imagery, talking about going up to a friend of mine when the singer's time comes. Greenbaum has said the idea came to him after watching a gospel segment on a country variety show, even though he wasn't particularly religious himself. Released in late 1969, the song climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1970 and sold well over 1 million copies, earning a gold record. It stuck around in a way few one-hit wonders do, licensed for use in movies, commercials, and television for decades after its original run, which has kept it financially rewarding for Greenbaum long after it left the charts. A British group called Doctor and the Medics also had major success with their own cover version years later, taking the song back to number 1 in the UK during the mid-1980s and introducing it to an entirely new generation of listeners. Despite the song's massive and lasting reach, Greenbaum himself never had another single come close to that success. He eventually stepped back from the music industry and moved into running a restaurant, content to let that one fuzzed-out guitar riff carry his legacy. Number 10, Convoy by C.W. McCall. C.W. McCall wasn't really a country singer by trade. He was an advertising executive from Omaha named William Fries, who had created the McCall character for a bread company commercial years earlier. When CB radios exploded in popularity among truckers and everyday drivers in the mid-1970s, Fries built an entire song around the slang, call signs, and lingo of that culture. Convoy tells the story of a trucker known by the handle Rubber Duck, who leads a growing convoy of 18-wheelers straight through toll booths and past state troopers, with the whole tale narrated in genuine CB slang that listeners at home were just starting to pick up themselves. Released in 1975, it hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January of 1976, and it did the same on the country charts, an unusually broad crossover for a novelty-leaning record. The song tapped so directly into the CB craze that it helped fuel even more interest in the hobby at a moment when sales of CB radios were already climbing fast across the country. Its popularity was big enough that it later inspired a full feature film of the same name in 1978, starring Chris Christopherson as the rubber duck character from the lyrics. Fries kept performing as C.W. McCall for years afterward, and even served a stint as mayor of a small Colorado town later in life. But nothing else he released as a musician, before or after Convoy, came anywhere close to that same crossover success. Number 9. Disco Duck by Rick Dees. Rick Dees was a radio DJ in Memphis when he recorded this one under the name Rick Dees and his Cast of Idiots, with a session singer providing the squawking duck voice throughout. It leaned hard into the disco craze while poking fun at it at the same time, which was part of its charm. Released in 1976, it climbed all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 that October, and eventually sold well over 1 million copies, earning a gold record for the fledgling songwriter and DJ. There's an odd wrinkle to the story too, because Dees worked at a radio station. Playing his own record raised obvious conflict of interest questions, and reports at the time say his own station actually held off on playing it for a while, even as it was already topping the charts nationally on other stations. Once it became clear just how big the song had gotten, the reluctance didn't last long. Dees went on to a long and successful career in radio, eventually hosting a nationally syndicated countdown show that ran for decades. But as a recording artist, the duck voice remained the peak of his output, a single novelty record that outlived nearly everything else on his resume. Number 8. Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. Trevor Horn and Jeff Downes formed The Buggles in England and released this synth-driven track in 1979, built around the idea that new visual technology was about to change music forever. It didn't set the American charts on fire the way some others on this list did, landing only in the lower half of the Billboard Hot 100, but it performed far better back in the United Kingdom, where it climbed all the way to number 1. It earned a permanent place in music history for a different reason entirely, though. On August 1st, 1981, Video Killed the Radio Star became the very first music video ever played on MTV, the moment the channel officially launched in the United States. That single fact turned an otherwise modest hit into one of the most historically significant songs of its era, since it's now impossible to talk about the birth of music television without mentioning it. Trevor Horn didn't fade into obscurity either. He briefly stepped in as the lead singer for the progressive rock band Yes before shifting almost entirely behind the scenes, going on to become one of the most influential producers in pop music, shaping massive hits for other artists across the following decade. But as a performer under the Buggles name, this remained the group's only real brush with the spotlight. Number 7. Funkytown by Lips Inc. Lips Inc. wasn't really a band in the traditional sense. It was a studio project out of Minneapolis, put together by songwriter and producer Steven Greenberg, with singer Cynthia Johnson providing the lead vocals. The song's title supposedly nods to Greenberg's frustration with Minneapolis not having the same nightlife and music scene as bigger cities, dreaming out loud about a place with more going on. Released in 1980, it became a massive worldwide hit, reaching number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topping the charts in numerous countries around the globe, including a run at number 1 in the United Kingdom as well. It's one of the biggest selling singles of its year, and an extended version of the track became a fixture in dance clubs well beyond its initial chart run. Cynthia Johnson, the voice behind the song, had a background as a singer and saxophonist before Greenberg brought her into the project, and her performance became the single most recognizable part of the record. Despite that scale of success, Lips Inc. never repeated it, and the project quietly wound down not long after, leaving Greenberg's studio creation as one of the biggest one-shot hits of the entire decade. Number 6. Turning Japanese by the Vapors. The Vapors were a band out of Guildford, England, and this song became their defining moment. Its meaning has been debated by fans for decades, with plenty of listeners reading into the lyrics about staring at photographs and losing your mind. The band themselves have generally pushed back on the more explicit interpretations, describing it instead as a song about the disorientation of heartbreak, about feeling like you're becoming someone else entirely after losing someone. Released in 1980, It performed even better back home in the UK, where it reached the top 5, than it did in the United States, though it still climbed into the American top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song's driving guitar riff and clipped tense verses helped it stand out on rock radio even outside the new wave scene it came from, and it got early support from influential British radio DJs who championed lesser-known acts. That ongoing mystery over what the song actually means is part of why it stayed in conversation for so long, resurfacing periodically in films and television soundtracks, looking for an instantly recognizable slice of early 80s new wave, even as the Vapors themselves never landed another song with that kind of reach. Number 5, They're Coming to Take Me Away, Haha by Napoleon XIV.
They're coming to take me away, haha, they're coming to take me away, ho ho.
This one might be the strangest song to ever crack the top 5. A New York recording engineer named Jerry Samuels wrote and performed it under the stage name Napoleon XIV, and there isn't much singing involved at all. It's mostly spoken word, delivered fast and manic over a simple beat of tambourine, snare, and clapping, with the vocals occasionally sped up like a chipmunk. The lyrics follow a narrator who's been driven to a breakdown after being left behind, and by the end, he's being hauled off to what he calls the funny farm. Samuels later admitted some of the inspiration came from his own experience voluntarily checking into a mental health facility years earlier. Released in the summer of 1966, the single entered the Billboard chart in the middle of the pack, and then rocketed upward within a matter of weeks, eventually peaking at number 3. It also reached number 1 on the Cashbox chart, which tracked sales and airplay a little differently than Billboard did at the time. The B-side of the single was a genuine curiosity in its own right, since it was simply the same recording played entirely backward, credited under a mirrored title. But the success came with backlash. Because the song joked so directly about a mental health crisis, it stirred real controversy, and plenty of radio stations pulled it from rotation entirely, uncomfortable with laughing at what the lyrics were actually describing. Once it got banned in enough markets, it dropped off the charts almost as fast as it had climbed them, spending only a handful of weeks in the upper tier before disappearing. Interestingly, the song found new life 7 years later when it briefly reappeared on the charts again in the early 1970s. Jerry Samuels never had another hit under that name, though decades later the song became a favorite on novelty and comedy radio countdowns that kept its strange legacy alive.
They're coming to take me away, haha, they're coming to take me away, ho ho.
Number 4, 867-5309/Jenny by Tommy Tutone. Written by Alex Call and Jim Keller, this song turned a fictional phone number into one of the most famous strings of digits in pop culture. Released by Tommy Tutone in 1982, it climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and eventually went gold, driven largely by how easy the hook and that 7-digit number were to remember after just one listen. The joke of the song, someone finding a girl's number scrawled on a wall, ended up causing real headaches for actual people. Anyone in the country who happened to have that exact phone number started getting flooded with prank calls, sometimes for years and years after the song had already left the charts, and the problem was persistent enough that some phone companies eventually had trouble assigning that number to new residential customers at all. Over time, some businesses actually leaned into the joke and sought out that exact number on purpose, treating it as free advertising rather than a nuisance. Tommy Tutone released other material afterward, but nothing that came close to matching the reach of that one phone number, which arguably became more famous than the band itself. Number 3, Somebody's Watching Me by Rockwell. Rockwell wasn't just some random Motown signee. He was Kennedy William Gordy, son of Motown founder Berry Gordy, and he deliberately kept that connection quiet when he signed with the label, wanting to make it on his own without help from his father's name. The song leans into a paranoid, watched from the shadows theme, and its most famous element is the chorus, sung by an uncredited guest vocalist who happened to be Michael Jackson, with his brother Jermaine adding additional backing vocals. Released in December of 1983, it climbed all the way to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1984. Right around the same period, Jackson's own Thriller era was still dominating the airwaves, with the two songs occupying nearby spots on the same chart at the same time. Rockwell's father, Motown founder Berry Gordy, reportedly didn't even know his son was in the studio making the record, and only recognized the familiar voice on the backing vocals after the track was already finished and being played for him. Once people found out whose voice was on the chorus, the song's popularity only grew, and the eerie, watched from the shadows tone of both the song and its accompanying video made it a recurring pick on Halloween-themed playlists in the years since. Rockwell released more music afterward, including a follow-up single that reached the American Top 40, but he never had another single reach that same level of success again. Number 2, Star Trekkin' by The Firm. This one never made much of a dent in the United States, but it became one of the strangest #1 hits the United Kingdom has ever seen. The Firm, a British novelty act, built the entire song around spoken word parodies of classic Star Trek characters and catchphrases set to a bouncing, repetitive electronic beat. It's less a song in the traditional sense and more a string of sci-fi one-liners strung together with a chorus. The track is packed with references any longtime fan of the franchise would recognize, delivered in exaggerated impressions of the show's most familiar voices, all wrapped around a repeated sing-song chorus. Released in 1987, it shot straight to #1 on the UK singles chart that June, knocking off more conventional pop songs during its short reign. It's still regularly brought up in conversations about the oddest chart toppers the UK has ever produced, often appearing on lists ranking the strangest #1 singles in British chart history. The Firm never came close to replicating that success again, and outside of dedicated novelty and science fiction fan circles, the song largely stayed a UK phenomenon rather than crossing over internationally the way some of the other entries on this list did. Number 1, Who Let the Dogs Out by Baha Men. This closing entry has one of the more tangled origin stories on this list. The song wasn't originally written for the Baha Men at all. A Trinidadian calypso artist named Anselm Douglas had released his own version titled Doggy a couple of years earlier, itself built on an even older idea that had been passed around Caribbean carnival music circles. Producer Steve Greenberg, the same person behind Lip Sync's Funkytown decades earlier, brought the song to the Bahamian Junkanoo group Baha Men, who recorded their now famous version. Released in 2000, it only reached number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100, a modest chart placement compared to how enormous the song actually became in everyday life almost immediately. It exploded into sports arenas, commercials, and parties everywhere, becoming a go-to crowd chant at basketball and hockey games across North America within just a couple of years, and it went on to win the Grammy for Best Dance Recording. The song's tangled history also led to real disputes over songwriting credit down the line, since so many different versions and earlier Caribbean carnival influences fed into what eventually became the Baha Men's global hit. Despite that massive cultural reach far beyond its modest chart numbers, Baha Men never had another song register anywhere close to that level again, closing out this list the same way it started, with a song far stranger and far more successful than anyone involved ever expected.
Let the dogs out!
That's 15 songs that took over the world for a few months and then quietly disappeared, leaving behind just one unforgettable track each and a lifetime of trivia and half-remembered radio moments to go along with it. If you grew up hearing any of these on the radio, let us know which one takes you back the most in the comments below. And tell us if we missed one of your own favorite oddball hits. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more looks back at the strange and wonderful corners of music history.